The June numbers are in, and today I'm breaking down what's happening here in Houston and what that means if you're thinking about buying or selling some point soon here in the greater Houston area. So June was yet another busy month for Houston real estate, but according to the Houston Association of Realtors HAR June market update, single family home sales fell by 8.6%, marking the third consecutive monthly year-over-year decline, with 9,728 units sold compared to 10,649 in June of last year. On a year-to-date basis, however, the market is still running ahead of about 1.7% of last year's record-setting volume. So keep in mind, even with 9,728 properties sold this year, that's still more than 2020 when we had about 9,400, more than 2019 when we had 8,300. So June 2021 was a record year with over 10,000 single-family properties sold. And I've talked about this before, but when you look at year-over-year numbers and we compare this year to last year, it's really difficult to get a good idea of how the market's performing because last year was such a significantly record-breaking year for real estate here in Houston. So just keep that in mind whenever we're looking at numbers. So interestingly enough, when we look at the different price points and the volume broken down by price point, the $500,000 to $1 million housing segment drew the highest sales volume of the month, registering a 22% year-over-year sales volume gain. That was then followed by homes priced between $250,000 and $500,000, which rose by 2.4%. And then the luxury segment, which is anything here in Houston considered $1 million or above, that saw its first decline in 2 years, slipping by only 2.3%. The average price of a single-family home rose 11% in June to $436,000, slightly below last month's record high. The average price for a single-family home here in Houston first broke that $400,000 mark back in March of this year. So this is the second highest of all time and the fourth time that that price has exceeded $400,000. The median price also jumped by 13.2% to $355,000, which is the highest median price of all time. The median price here in Houston has been above that $300,000 mark since May of last year. In addition to the drop in single-family home sales, the total property sales of all different types across the Houston area experienced declines, and pending sales slid by 7.7%. The total amount of available properties increased by 27.4%, and while many buyers may rejoice at this, we are still only sitting at 2 months of inventory. So meaning if no more properties came on the market, properties continued to sell at the same pace that we've been seeing, we would run out of homes in 2 months. This is up from that 1.4 months we saw at this time last year, but we're still a very far way from a buyer's market, which is normally considered to be 6 months of inventory or more. But just for perspective, sitting at 2 months of inventory, it's the highest amount of relative inventory that we've seen since November of 2020. So if you're a buyer in the market with 27.4% more listings on the market, this does give you options. Buyer demand has slowed some with rising interest rates, so you're probably going to be in a less competitive situation and also potentially have more options for your new home, depending on, of course, your price point and neighborhood that you are looking at. If you're thinking about selling, I'd challenge you first to think about a few things. The first would be if you have to sell your house, right? If you're moving somewhere else and you need the money out of the current place that you're living in, we can chat about selling, obviously, and how to make the most possible amount of money in the sale of your current home, right? But if you aren't in need of the money, then maybe consider potentially renting out the property you live in now and buying a new one. Last month, we saw a 24.8% increase in the amount of leased listings, like actually signed, sealed, delivered leases here in Houston. So rental demand is very high due to a lack of inventory here in Houston of like $250,000, $300,000 homes or less, and also because of interest rate increases impacting buyers. So it may make sense to move to your new home and keep your current one as a rental. We can always provide you information and data for both renting and selling. If you do have to sell or you don't want to become a landlord, pricing now when you're pricing to sell is more important than ever before. While in 2021, we may have been able to test the market a little bit with prices, this year we've got to be spot on to ensure that we drive the most amount of buyer demand. There is still definitely opportunity if you're considering selling your property, so don't think you've missed the mark and you're never going to sell. If you're thinking about moving, or if you have any questions about the Houston real estate market, please don't hesitate to reach out. Always happy to chat and give more information about what's going on here in Houston or specifically for your neighborhood. Talk to you soon.